Hello. Hope everyone can hear us. Hopefully someone can type in the chat to make sure. I think we're live. So it'd be good to get that verified before we.
All good.
Okay, all good. Awesome. Well, hi everyone. My name is Greg. I'm a senior software engineer on the Interlay team, working on the Vault client software and the parachain. And this is my colleague Chris. Chris, you want to?
Hi everyone. Chris, run business development. Basically, everything to do with growing out the network. Vaults is extremely integral to all of that stuff, so that's probably my main focus. Thank you very much to everyone who's joining, and nice to meet you all. So I guess I'll share my screen and we can get started with the presentation.
Yep, you can do that.
So while I'm sharing this, I guess I'll go through exactly what we're going to be talking about. Hopefully this works with my Mac computer. So basically, plan of the workshop is go through, give you an overview of basically how Interlay works, what we're trying to do, mission, vision, basic kind of background to everything, how vaults fit into all of that stuff and how everything works. If you're interested in being a vault, what are the responsibilities, what are the benefits? Then Greg afterwards will go into a bit more detail to the technical side of things. We'll also go through how to set up a vault, go through kind of the future stuff that we're planning, and then have a Q&A at the end of that where we can answer any questions that you guys have. I hope that sounds good to everyone. I'll go into slideshow mode. I hope that this is working. I can't see any of your comments. So I'm just going to hope that it is. So basically, Interlay and interBTC. The vision, everything behind what we're trying to do is basically allow anyone to access any digital asset on any blockchain in a secure and sustainable way without sacrificing decentralization. First thing that we're focusing on is with Bitcoin, obviously $1 trillion market. It's the biggest store of value in all of blockchain, so it's the most logical starting point. And we're doing this with, currently, we have KBTC vaults live on Kusama with Kintsugi. We are live on Polkadot with Interlay. interBTC vaults go live in the next week or so. That's basically where we're at right now. How does it work at a very high level? Firstly, you lock your Bitcoin within a vault. This allows you to mint interBTC. interBTC is a one-to-one backed stablecoin that's pinned to the Bitcoin price. You can then use interBTC within DeFi for whatever you want to do with all the interesting stuff that's going on with other Polkadot parachains. Connect to EVM, do basically whatever you want to do. And then whenever you want to redeem your interBTC back for Bitcoin, put in a redeem request. It has to be fulfilled within 24 hours. You get redeemed, everyone's happy. Let's go into a bit more detail as to kind of how this actually works and how vaults are involved in this particular process. So, for example, if you want to lock, say, 1 Bitcoin within a vault, the vault has to put up 150%. In this instance right now on Kusama, it's 250% of the value of the Bitcoin in KSM as collateral. So a vault locks up 250%, then enables the locking up of 100% of the value inside that vault of Bitcoin. So any user can come along, use this vault, lock their Bitcoin, mint interBTC, and use it in all the things that I discussed above. And the way in which kind of things get interesting, a bit more complex compared to other bridges, is one, everything can go well. The user puts in the redeem request, the collateral is unlocked, and the user gets their Bitcoin back because the redeem request gets accepted by the vault. Everyone's happy. The other thing that can happen is, for example, that the vault chooses to steal what's inside the vault, inside the wallet. We're tracking that wallet, and if anything moves, a theft is flagged to the system, and the vault's collateral gets slashed. and the user is then reimbursed 110% in the collateral locked in that vault. So worst case scenario, if everything goes wrong, the user in the worst case scenario makes a profit on the collateral and they can do whatever they want with that collateral. Us compared to other bridges, basically the bridges that are available as a gateway into DeFi right now are either fully decentralized, fully centralized, or at best a restricted number of signatories, kind of distributed in the way that they do transactions. And obviously, from this added centralization, there's added risk. In most cases, you're either fully uninsured or at best insured singularly by Ether. interBTC is the only fully decentralized bridge where anyone can allow the minting of interBTC, anyone can mint interBTC, and be safe in the fact that they're backed up by multi-collateral insurance. In a basic kind of overview, we are to Bitcoin what multi-collateral DAI is to USD, except you can actually physically redeem for Bitcoin, which you can't do for US dollar and multi-collateral DAI. This basically, in essence, is a fully insured decentralized custody network backed up by multi-collateral insurance. So it enables you to use your Bitcoin in ways that you wouldn't be able to use it before, and easier to use than a hardware wallet, more secure than an exchange because it's decentralized and censorship resistant, and it's cheaper than most professional custody solutions on the market. It allows you to pay, trade, lend, borrow, invest, do whatever you want with the Bitcoin, but be safe in the fact that when you want to redeem, you won't get stopped by any centralized actor. And if anything goes wrong, you're fully insured by multi-collateral insurance. I'll now pass over to Greg to go a bit more into details about the technical side of things.
Thanks, Chris. So if you want to go to the next slide. So the first thing to mention is the whole stack is kind of ingrained on Polkadot. We're built in Rust using the substrate framework, and that affords us a few nice flexibility. So for one, we can reuse a lot of core library logic from Bitcoin Core. So for example, the SecP256K1 lib for some cryptographic operations, and this kind of takes some of the complexity off our hands. With Substrate, we can do some interesting things. So we can add custom transaction fees. So if we look at a competitor such as TBTC, which is based on Ethereum, they can't really change the gas model there. So submitting blocks in their relay is based on the on Ethereum costs, whereas because we are our own layer one chain, with Substrate we can customize those transaction fees. So for honest relays, we could actually even refund those fees, which makes the system a bit cheaper and a bit faster to run. We also have some cool stuff. So with off-chain workers, so with Maker, you have the sort of keeper model where you rely on incentivized participants to do take on certain actions such as reporting under collateralized vaults. Whereas with interBTC and the interBTC parachain, we can actually do that those liquidations automatically. The protocol is kind of based on a lot of research. So Alexei and Dom published Exclaim a number of years ago in IEEE, and since then the company itself we published over 30 papers and garnered around 700 plus citations. So we're quite well backed in the academic community. The code has been audited by now 3 companies, Informal Systems and NCC, the initial first 2 audits, which we cleared, and more recently we've been fully audited by another company. The initial prototype was supported by Web3 Foundation, so we received a grant for that, and that's kind of then grown into this more inclusive ecosystem. And in the true decentralized nature of Web3. All of our code is open source, so anyone who's curious how the parachain is running or the Vault clients run can actually look at the code in detail and analyze that before they want to run that. So you want to go to the next slide, please, Chris? Yep. So just to go a bit more into the sort of the architecture as we kind of zoom in more towards vaults, which is obviously the topic of this presentation. We have kind of 4 modules at the core of the interBTC parachain, and Chris touched on this before. We have the issue module, which handles taking kind of the 2-phase commit process for issuing into BTC and verifying the Bitcoin payment through the Bitcoin relay. We have the redeem module, which does the kind of the opposite of that in a way. So we track that into BTC is sent by the vault to users on exiting the system. On overpayment and underpayment of BTC, we actually have this refund system, which allows vaults to, or incentivizes vaults to refund participants additional BTC, or indeed we might be able to even mint further the capacity. And lastly, the replace module is used actually for vaults to replace between themselves. So if you're a vault and you want to exit the system, you can use the replace protocol to ask another vault with sufficient collateral to cover your holdings, and then they would take the Bitcoin previously held by you into custody and lock up additional collateral to do that. And the incentive here is rewards. So one thing I think we'll touch on in a few slides is that vaults earn rewards equivalent to the amount of BTC held in custody, or the issued amount of KBTC or IBTC, and that incentivizes growth of the ecosystem. So in the next architecture slide, which Chris will continue. Yep. So we're zooming in, kind of zooming a bit further. So the Vault Registry is, in essence, uses all of these modules to comprise the system, and vaults are these collateralized entities which take in lock BTC, lock collateral in exchange for holding BTC. And the Vault Registry itself, it kind of intermediates primarily between the Bitcoin relay for the verification of block headers and transactions, and also this Oracle subsystem. So I won't digress too much into oracles in this presentation, but oracles are also trusted intermediaries which submit price feeds for the collateral assets that the vault wishes to lock. In the example of Kintsugi, currently we have one collateral type, and that's KSM. We're extending this to Kint, and then I think also some stable coins, and the same will be true of Interlay and IBTC. That will initially be backed by DOT, but we will then leverage stable coins and the Inter governance token. So next slide, please, Chris. So we're zooming in. This is the last kind of amplification of what we're going to look at today on the parachain side, which is the Vault Registry. And the Vault Registry is the module which kind of associates these collateralized identities, and this is comprised of a few components. So the first thing is the Polkadot substrate account ID, which is used to sign transactions. We then differentiate accounts based on the collateral asset and the wrapped asset. So the wrapped asset isn't too important. On Kintsugi, this is primarily always going to be KBTC for the foreseeable future, but at some stage when we leverage additional underlying chains, we may integrate, for example, Bitcoin Cash, then this will be a different wrapped asset. But the collateral ID will be subject to change shortly once we introduce once we introduce Kint and other stablecoins and add the thresholds for those assets. The Bitcoin public key is required by the vault identity, and this is for a scheme called on-chain key derivation. So this is something which I can touch on. This is if there's interest. Vault clients basically derive new keys based on this on-chain scheme. And this allows us to reduce the requirement of having op returns and issue payments, which makes it easier for the minting of interBTC. And lastly, we tag on all the Bitcoin addresses associated with that vault, and this allows us to do such things as theft reporting. I think I also touched on the off-chain workers before, so this is something this module also takes care of. So we have something called the collateralization rate, which I'll briefly discuss in the next slide. But taking this into account, the off-chain workers utilize this module to check whether the vault is sufficiently collateralized based on the amount of collateral and tokens it has locked. Thanks, Chris. And we can see here that very simple calculation using the exchange rate from the Oracle module, as mentioned before, along with something we call the secure threshold. So this is the threshold required by the system for the vault to be sufficiently over-collateralized. I believe in the case of KSM, this is 260%. I could be wrong, I need to double check. But what this means is that we can use this calculation to determine whether the vault has sufficient capacity to issue more KBTC. And indeed, if we can, there's some rough calculations here, which I won't privy out, but if the vault goes below, say, I think the liquidation threshold may be like 110%, or so, if the collateralization rate falls below that, then we will use the off-chain workers mentioned before to automatically liquidate those holdings. That would take the collateral previously held by that vault into custody by the system, and we would then also track the issued tokens through that as well. And this enables something which the community has already started leveraging, called the burn redeem, which allows users to burn their KBTC or IBTC for collateral directly and receive a significant premium on that. The last thing to sort of touch on from the chain perspective is the notion of fraud proofs. So one of the guarantees by the system is that the Bitcoin is always one-to-one backed. In order to do this, we need to prevent vaults from moving Bitcoin after they have received it in custody. If this wasn't possible, we would have sort of a synthetic Bitcoin asset, which was only insured by collateral. And that by basing the assumption that we are always one-to-one backed, it also furthers the guarantees that the KBTC or IBTC can be redeemed for physical Bitcoin. So, yeah, that is the only thing to mention on that. So I'll hand back to Chris for a brief kind of privy into like vault responsibilities.
Thanks, Greg. So yeah, we've spoken about vaults and how important they are. If you wanted to be one, you wanted to take part in the network, what would be the responsibilities you need to take up? What would you need to be aware of? And how we reward you for the value that you bring to the network? 4 things, basically. 1, you need to put up the collateral for BTC to be locked in the vault. 2, you need to have custody over that and store it in a wallet and be aware of where it is. 3, redeem. So you need to be online to fulfill redeem requests within 24 hours. So we recommend that you be online once every 8 hours just to make sure that you're on top of this. And collateralization, you need to be checking the collateral rate and making sure that it's staying above the liquidation level. If you don't manage these 2 bottom things and your collateralization rate goes below 110% and you don't redeem within 24 hours, you'll be automatically liquidated. So this is the risks that you take up as a vault. upon doing these things, how are you earning money as a vault and for the value that you're bringing? Number one, first and foremost, is the tokens. We bootstrap the system over a 4-year period and give the vaults a percentage of, that's basically worked out to go further into what Greg said, the amount of BTC locked in your vault divided by all of the BTC across all vaults. So the more you put in, the more value you get in terms of block rewards. The other three are smaller at first, but as the network grows out, they'll grow larger, which are mint and redeem fees. Percentage is taken off for any time anyone mints and redeems, and this is shared between vaults. Protocol enforcements are reporting theft or replacing underperforming vaults. You can then take on the collateral locked in that vault. And number 4, which is something that we're pushing for because there's a lot of interest in this area, is staking yield generating assets such as something like LKSM. So you stake it in another protocol, gain those staking rewards, get a derivative, and then use that derivative to put more collateral in your vault, earn more tokens. So instead of putting your assets into one place, earning one type of reward or collateral, you're putting it into a vault and earning staking rewards, collateral from other vaults, BTC from fees, and our native tokens. You're diversifying instead of just staying into one place and earning one type of yield. Token utility, basically how the tokens are used. Governance, we have a curve-like model where you stake the vote. The longer you lock it, the more voting power you have. 5% of supply goes to staking, and you can pay transaction fees and increase your capital efficiency by using the KINT or inter tokens for transaction fees and utility. These are the kind of things that make it a sustainable token, and it's what other tokens are doing. What we're looking to do in the future is basically enable a vault to be almost like a decentralized bank, and increase the ways, and doing this by increasing the ways that you can collaborate with other people in a trustless manner to get more collateral into a vault, and have kind of leverage positions and be more kind of strategic in the way that you want to gain collateral within a vault. And 2, also, once the collateral's locked, we don't want it just to be useless, well, more or less kind of locked and not have anything done with it. So we're looking to create things like market makers so that you can move your collateral the collateral locked in the vault between different types of collateral that are available in the system, so you can be a bit more dynamic in the way that you use your collateral within the vault. Those are the things that we're kind of looking into to increase the value of the token over time. I'll pass back over to Greg.
Thanks, Chris. Yep, so it's pretty profitable to run a vault. I think the current APR on Kintsugi is around about 500% for the average vault. And we're trying to find new ways to utilize the KINT token, as Chris mentioned. And the next step will be to introduce it as a collateral asset. So I'm going to jump back down again to sort of the technical side, kind of. But I'm going to start a bit more high level here. So, like, now we're looking at this vault client. We've discussed basically the vault registry and the on-chain identity stuff, and how that works with the parachain. But what is this vault client software and what's it do? So I have this diagram here. I think kind of explains shows a kind of a brief, like, how does the system look like from the top down. So we have basically the interBTC parachain in the middle, so Kintsugi or Interlay. The user speaks directly to that. So we have the issue and redeem modules, so they might submit transactions directly to those modules, those pallets, saying, hey, I want to mint into BTC, or hey, actually, I don't want this into BTC anymore. Can you send me my into BTC back? And that's what the user does there. It speaks to the chain, submits a transaction, and then the vault monitoring on-chain activity directly from the interBTC parachain will see these requests come in, and what it can then do is for issue derive the OKD key, so the new issue key, and add that to its Bitcoin wallet and wait for a transaction. We may also, on best effort, submit issue payments in order to make sure that all payments are forwarded to the interBTC parachain. And then on the Bitcoin side, what the vault will do, it will come round to Bitcoin and specifically for redeem and replace. Also, it will say, okay, I'm participating in this request. I want to transfer Bitcoin. Speaks to the Bitcoin network. From a technical perspective, I'll show this in the demo. We will speak to a Bitcoin core node, and then it will come back. Once that payment is included in the Bitcoin chain, it will come back to the Vault client. The Vault client will take the transaction and the proof that that was included on the Bitcoin chain and forward that to the interBTC parachain and complete the request. So if we go to the next slide, please, Chris. I think I mentioned some of this already here. So issue requests, we derive new keys to add to your Bitcoin core wallet. And we also execute issues on a best effort basis. Redeem, we transfer Bitcoin and prove that that was included. We have, I think now the system parameters are upgraded to 48 hours. So for redeem and issue, we have the user and vault respectively have 48 hours to prove that Bitcoin was transferred. And the one thing I didn't mention actually in that kind of architectural overview was we have a Bitcoin relay which needs to be updated, and this was touched on in the very initial slides when I showed we have the Oracle, the Bitcoin relay, and then we have the Vault Registry, and that relay actually requires to be updated by someone. So one incentivized activity is that the Vault will submit block headers from Bitcoin and make sure that's up to date, and we have internal logic that handles whether or not the relay is on a fork or if it can be updated successfully. The last primary responsibility of the Vault is to ensure that the Vault is not liquidated. So it will up to a reasonable thresholds. These are configurable in the client itself. We can lock deposit or withdraw collateral from the system based on the secure threshold and the price feed. And this allows the Vault operator to not have to manually update this whenever the exchange rate changes, and this can be automated fairly easily. So comprising that knowledge, we can then sort of, I think, look into sort of how does this work from the user's perspective. How do people actually run these vaults themselves? So I have pre-recorded a demo. I didn't want to risk running a demo. We had some issues with testnet availability, so I thought I'd record this. So if you can press play there, Chris, I can talk us through what's happening. So the Vault client is an off-chain piece of software written in Rust. First thing you want to do is download the binary, the client, and this will take a few seconds. We have releases on GitHub for all the different chains. So we obviously have Kintsugi and Interlay, but we also have a testnet version. Once that's downloaded, we'll want to, it's just kind of operational details. So we move that into our path and make sure we can execute that binary. I then want to start Bitcoin Core. So one thing I did gloss over is I didn't download and sync the chain manually. This is already a pre-synced node on my local laptop, so should speed up the demo a bit. But we can see now that the Bitcoin Core testnet instance is syncing here. We've got peers. Next thing, so I need to make some keys here. So we need some parachain keys to speak with the parachain. And we then run the Vault. So that's the last step, fairly quick. So what I have done here, so with the testnet, we have actually a faucet which the client can automatically connect to in the fund, and this streamlines sort of the setup process. I don't know if you can scroll back actually in the video, Chris, just so we can see the vault running command. There we go. Okay, cool. So a few things to detail here. Oh, might want to go back a bit again, Chris. Yep, that's perfect. Thank you. So there's some configuration arguments here to touch on, I think, from the operational perspective. So here we're going to start running the Vault client, but it needs two things. It needs a Bitcoin Core node to speak to, and it also needs a parachain to speak to. So because we require that the Bitcoin Core node is run locally, since it obviously has a separate wallet and stores keys there. For that, we give it the Bitcoin RPC URL of localhost, and we give it the testnet RPC port. Also, I have username and password set, so I set those. We can then see that I give it the Vault client the key file that I generated before using the subkey tool. So if you want more info on that, please do check out our docs. We can link those afterwards or share those on Discord if anyone wants to kind of try this setup themselves. In that key file I generated, glossing over sort of the semantics a bit, but there's an account ID and a secret phrase. I give it the key name, which is the account ID that I've generated, and that basically tells the Vault client which key to start with. As mentioned, for testnet, we have this faucet, so that can automatically fund the client, and I pass the URL for that, which is API testnet /faucet. And then I ultimately then tell the client that I want to use the KSM collateral asset, and for that, let's fund with the faucet. So let's just ask the faucet to give me the default amount, and then I can register with that. Lastly, I said we need to speak to two things. First thing was the Bitcoin Core node. The second thing was the BTC parachain URL, so the interBTC node. For this, we can run a parachain locally, but using a remote node is fully supported. And so in this case, we pass the API testnet /parachain, and it's the WebSocket connection. And this enables us to listen and communicate to the publicly hosted instance. But of course, you could use any other instance of those, as long as it's a full node. We do require that the Vault client is speaking to a full node, both on the Bitcoin side and the parachain side. An interesting thing to note here is that we are looking into ways to kind of get rid of the Bitcoin Core node requirement, implementing what we want to call a Vault-like client, and this may look a few different ways. The ideal is to utilize something like Electrum instead of Bitcoin Core. We can use that for managing sort of the wallet side of things and importing and exporting keys. But that obviously is a work in progress and will be something we'll release anytime soon, unfortunately. So if you could press play again, Chris, and maybe actually you could probably skip through the video a little bit, since there's some waiting here. But what we can see in the logs essentially is that we've started with the account ID that I detailed in the command line arguments. It's connected to the parachain of the API testnet. The runtime itself is using the testnet. We have some versioning there, so we want to speak to a specific version. In this case, you can see spec version 6. Before actually it connects to the BTC parachain, so one interesting point to mention is that the Vault client will actually wait for Bitcoin Core to sync. and this is required because the Vault client intermediates up to date with the BTC parachain. So once we send transactions and check issue keys, and we want the latest view of the Bitcoin network, so we require that node to have synced first, and same for the parachain. But I digress. Anyway, once we've connected to the parachain, we will then, in the case of the testnet, we fund from the faucet, and then we will register the vault. So what we first do is ask Bitcoin Core for a public key, and this is used for the OKD scheme. More details in the docs and the spec. But once that's submitted to the parachain, we will then continue with the registration, and that will essentially lock up collateral. We can skip ahead a bit more, Chris, I think. Let's see if there's any, I can't remember if there's anything else interesting to mention. This does take a while because I think we believe we wait for finalization as well. I think I may actually, maybe that might be it. Oh no, in this case there was an error. So this is something to note that we have seen on, you may have seen on Kintsugi, for example, we have currency ceilings per collateral asset. At least initially, this reduces the risk for vaults and prevents someone from locking up too much KSM, for instance. So in this case, the vault client actually registers, but then tries to lock additional collateral and fails to do so because the system ceiling is exceeded. But it will anyway continue, it won't error out. It will then search through the chain for any derivation keys it still needs to add. So this is why it says adding derivation key and adding keys from past issues. So it will make sure that the Bitcoin wallet is fully up to date with all the possible keys that could hold funds. And then we have some other subroutines. So the Vault client supports Prometheus metrics, and this allows you to build some nice Grafana dashboards, which I think some operators have already been doing. And then it will continue with kind of monitoring the chains. It will check for any open requests. So redeem, replace requests with, and it will check Bitcoin for payments that still need to be submitted to the parachain, and we can see here it then says done processing open request because it doesn't have any payments to forward. So then it kind of, the vault kind of is at that stage is idle, and it will just wait for either new blocks on the Bitcoin side to submit to the BTC relay, or wait for incoming payments to add issue keys or redeem requests, and kind of basically monitor the parachain side of things for the operator. And that's sort of the demo. It's fairly straightforward. Apart from my rambling explanation, it's fairly straightforward to run a vault. Again, we can link the docs after this call. There's just a few commands you need to submit, but I would say that at the moment it's quite a high technical entry barrier for running a vault, and I would advise users to take their time. We've already seen a number of issues with liquidations where with incorrect configurations of the Bitcoin core node, for instance. And if you do have any questions or you're unsure, please do reach out in Discord, and me or another one of my colleagues would be happy to help you. With that, I thank you. I will pass you back to Chris to zoom out of it again on kind of what the future has in store for Interlay and interBTC.
Cool. Yeah, thanks very much for doing all that, Greg. Really interesting stuff. So basically, roadmap for next year, 2, 3. We are live on Kintsugi with KBTC vaults, as I said before. Go live with vaults on interBTC and Interlay with the learnings and the kind of bit of experimentation that we did with Kintsugi on Kusama. It will be much kind of bigger more stable with Interlay on interBTC as it is with any kind of Polkadot Kusama relationship in terms of parachains. The starting collateral with Interlay and interBTC vaults would be around about $150,000, whereas it was around 25 to 50,000 for KBTC vaults. Obviously working with pretty much every other parachain to get as many integrations for uses with KBTC and IBTC, as many DeFi applications as we can, so that you can use it and earn yield and kind of get the most out of your derivative and out of your BTC. Then in the next few quarters, adding these collateral earning models. So as Greg said, we're starting up the Kint vaults and the stablecoin vaults. Then after that, it will be liquid staking as collateral, so you can have kind of compounded earnings for when you're using your collateral, and experimenting with other things, synthetics, NFTs, other things with the Kusama, that whatever is most stable will be taken onto Interlay and into BTC. Then afterwards, when the near future will be interconnecting with other chains, Cosmos, Solana, Ethereum, and trying to expand as much as we possibly can. And obviously on top of this, we're focused on BTC right now, but our bridge can be used with any underlying, any kind of, to connect any two blockchains. So in the future, the actual product that we have and the gateway basically can be used in any, can be adapted to changing markets, can use any asset, and can kind of be used in a market that does change quite a lot. In the future also, alongside this, we've basically proved with a protocol called XCC on a way of doing things in a much more capitally efficient way, and basically kind of, at the moment, interBTC is targeted at the wrapped Bitcoin market and a decentralized insured version of those, and competing directly with those. In other ways, we're competing and trying to open up the market of basically anyone who has BTC but wants to keep their Bitcoin within a wallet and never leave their own custody. We basically allow you to use it in DeFi applications, less so than interBTC, because interBTC will be more for the expert DeFi user, but anyone who has Bitcoin will be able to use interBTC or a derivative of that in DeFi markets without ever leaving their wallet, to focus on the other kind of 700 billion locked up in Bitcoin of people that don't want to interact with DeFi, don't want to learn and things like that. So that's another big thing on the horizon for Interlay. And that is everything from us. Thank you very much for listening to us the entire time. And I think we'll hand over to some Q&A, if that sounds good. I'll stop sharing my screen as well.
Yeah, I think we've already got some questions, so let's have a look. Go here. So the first one from is HODL wallet, which one? I'm not sure. If you can clarify the question in the chat, that would be appreciated. But I can say that for like issuing, we support like any hardware wallet or exchange. People can just send directly. Yeah, so Chris, I think you maybe said we can use HODL wallets. Yeah, so like, yes, for issue requests, so for minting into BTC, you can use your HODL wallet. You can transfer directly to the address that is generated. You can also, on redeem, you can give obviously any address. So that can be something that's passed back, for example, from Ledger. Vault. Yeah, we are looking into integrations. Currently, there is no there's no hardware support for the Kintsugi network. So unlike the Polkadot app, for example, there's no like Ledger app or Trezor app for working directly with the Kintsugi network. But on the Bitcoin side, we can use hardware wallets. But you're right, we are looking into integrations for those. And that should be coming within the next year, definitely. what else we have? So how is KBC interBTC protected from an UST Terra horrible situation? Chris, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I guess I can comment on like a user perspective. The main way in which users are protected is that nothing can be built without the user being fully protected by the whole the collateral and the insurance side of things. So if everything goes wrong and there's a downward spiral and all the vaults close and the whole network closes down, the whole system is still backed up by the collateral put in. So, and obviously once this is spread out into multi-collateral and things like that, it will still be backed by all of that. So if everything goes terribly, then everyone will still be like, it can only be built by the fact that all of those users will be reimbursed anyway. So like worst comes to worst, that will be what happens. And obviously it's not ideal, but that's kind of what we hope to happen in the what would happen in the worst case scenario. That's kind of and obviously the downward spiral, we try to kind of mitigate that risk and do it community led in terms of like new collaterals that we add. We're also trying to do as much analysis as we possibly can as to which collaterals to add to analyze which ones would be risky or not, and test it out in Kusama before testing out that. It's you can never tell what's going to happen in the whole blockchain environment, and it's a new environment, so things can happen that we can't plan for. But we try to do things in as pragmatic as a way as possible, and in a kind of a research focused, product focused way to kind of mitigate any risks like that.
Yeah. I think also Matthias, you have a good comment on that. KBT is not algorithmic stablecoin. Yeah, you're right. So we're protected kind of natively from such a Terra attack in the same way. And yeah, to go back to Chris, what Chris was just saying, which I think also answers another question in terms of kind of Kent intermanipulation. So one of the things we're doing, especially with introducing Kent as a collateral, is we're devoting significant resources to understanding the price thresholds. And those will probably be, at least initially, very high to prevent market manipulation. And also from vaults being liquidated if the value of Kint fluctuates quite dramatically. So we're looking into that actively just now, but I believe the timeline is potentially within the next few weeks. We will introduce Kint vaults and stablecoin vaults as well. So that's quite exciting.
The Kint inter ceiling. So the Kint ceiling right now for KBTC vaults is 60,000 KSM. As it gets filled up, we tend to double or triple it, just depending on how fast things are growing. In terms of inter collateral ceilings, we're currently sending out a questionnaire just to get an idea as to how many vaults are interested and what kind of collateral they're willing to put up and things like that. Based on that, we'll put up a ceiling just to make sure that everything's running properly once we first start. I don't want to say anything that we don't know exactly right now, but we started with Kint around $500,000 ceiling. So Inter will probably be 3, 4, 5 times that. And then we'll double as the network grows, and just try and do it in a sustainable way so that like we know everything's working well before we kind of start increasing the ceiling too fast, basically.
Yeah, and then for the emission rates, we detailed these in the white papers. I don't know, I can't answer that off the top of my head, but the white paper details there's 10 million Kint, for example, I think distributed, and 25% is 25% or 45%. Anyway, so some percentages devoted to like vaults, for example, or the stake to vote awards, and those then distributed per block. So the emission rates can be calculated from that. but also happy to chat in Discord or in the video chat afterwards with you if you have any more questions there. But please do have a look at the white papers. And I think the last main question is thoughts on how to avoid premium redeem BTC transactions triggering vault liquidations. So I'm trying to think how best to answer this. So we've engineered the thresholds in such a way as that there's a significant price drop between the premium redeem threshold and the liquidation threshold. So we can be sure that premium redeeming against a vault won't cause that vault to be liquidated. Of course, for vault operators, we recommend that they try to stay above the secure collateral threshold. So with KSM on Kintsugi, this is 260%. Premium redeem is around 200, and liquidation is 110 or 150. I can't recall exactly. So the idea would be that as the price exchange between KSM and BTC falls, they would probably want to lock up additional, buy and lock up additional KSM to avoid going below that threshold. I think that answers your question, but again, happy to chat in the chats if you have any more questions. Okay, I think with that we are kind of at time. Thank you everyone for listening. Chris, do you want to?
Sorry, I was just reading that quick question.
Tim. Oh wait, sorry, Tim. No, we did answer your question, Tim. Yeah, that was the yeah, that was that. So the answer to that was effectively that we're working on engineering the collateral thresholds for KINT in such a way as that we prevent the market from being manipulated. I think that answers your question.
So, well, also, I'm guessing that you're saying the main way in which the main way right now that we're incentivizing vaults is with our native token. But is it going to go down in value, and is it going to reach a floor? Is it going to be so low that the way that we bootstrap the system is probably not going to be as good as it could be, basically, if I'm understanding the question correctly. Yes, this is something that we think about a lot. Right now, the way in which the token's used is quite standard compared to most other tokens, and we're looking into as many, lots of different initiatives, the decentralized bank side of things, insurance models, people are happy to have the insurance model and pay for that. So we're thinking about maybe kind of if you using the native token to kind of have like a premium service and get more use out of the KINT and Inter tokens, so that they become more useful in the ecosystem. Also, obviously, the more integrations that we have, the more we become kind of an integral part of the business to other DeFi protocols and other people within the system. So they're going to want to take part in the voting system. Obviously, this is quite standard for any staking token, but those are the things that we're thinking about right now. But yes, ideas in the future to increase token utility are already in the pipeline. I don't want to say anything that isn't public information right now, but it's something that we think about a lot. And because it's the main way in which we're bootstrapping the system, we want to make sure that the value is increasing day by day as much as anyone else does. I hope that answers your question. Cool. I think I did. Good. So yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Greg. If anyone has any other questions to do with business side of things, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help. Discord's open to anyone who has any questions. I got Twitter, I've got all the other stuff, Telegram, LinkedIn, whatever's best for you, just reach out. I'm happy to help with anything. If you're interested in running a vault, please use the link for the questionnaire for the Interlay stuff so we can have an idea and support you in the way that you need to be supported. And the docs page should have most of the information that you need. We're also making a questionnaire for like how to interact with it, Interlay. So if you just have, I don't know, maybe if you're good at infrastructure but you don't have many funds, or you have a custody license but you don't want to manage the technology side of stuff, we're going to make a questionnaire that kind of is a more interactive way to interact with the docs and say, okay, you fit into this bucket. Here's the information for you, and then you should be talking about this, this, and this, and this is how you can interact, basically. So a bit more of a dynamic way of teaching you guys how to use the Interlay product. So that should hopefully be coming up very soon. I can't give the exact date, but that's something that I'm working on personally.
Yep, and then lastly, to answer, I think Sparscoin had a few more comments on the technical side and vault liquidation. So yes, recently we've seen a number of vault liquidations on Kintsugi due to ongoing market volatility. So I think we're going to write up a post-mortem, should be out next week, on exactly how some of these liquidations occurred and how we can avoid these in the future. We're definitely introducing more technical solutions, and we've already submitted a bunch of bug fixes for things that people have found or have faced even on testnet and Kintsugi. So that's great to see. But obviously, if there was any fault, then we would recommend the community starts governance proposals votes on treasury spends to reimburse vaults if they were unjustly liquidated. I think that's the kind of best sort of generic answer I'd give. Just looking at sort of the more specific questions. So, can the vault clients run and shut down if it discovers another vault already running using the same account ID? Unfortunately, no. We don't. There's no consensus between vaults. So we can't tell if another vault is running using that same account ID. That would essentially be a misconfiguration and the fault of the operator, unfortunately. So if it did indeed double spend from the Bitcoin wallet, that does count as a theft, unfortunately. But as suggested, if there was something afoul with even the configuration, I guess it's up to the community to vote on whether that can be reimbursed, or if there's a way to fund in Kint and the governance token, and that's all live now. So please do make use of that system. Yes, and then we did indeed. There is one proposal on the technical side to delay liquidations by a number of blocks. In the example of theft, this could allow the vault to return the Bitcoin or refund in order to not lose its collateral holdings. And this may be something we implement in the future, but there are some breaking changes to consider. So it's not something that will be fixed imminently, unfortunately. But the other place I would recommend, if anyone has any ideas or recommendations on ways to improve the system, we have specifications, spec.interlay.io, that's public on GitHub. We accept PRs, and you can open GitHub issues there, and the same for the code for the clients and the parachain software. If you find a misconfiguration or some issue with the Vault software or the parachain, please do open an issue or feature request there, and the team will be more than happy to look into that. With that, I think I'm going to cap it there. We have 1 minute remaining. So again, to echo what Chris mentioned, thank you everyone for listening. Please do follow up on Discord or wherever, and we love engaging with the community, and we're interested to hear any more ideas, suggestions, or future requests. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks very much for your time. Hope everyone has a lovely weekend, and hopefully see you guys soon in another community call of some sort. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Take care.